Hello everyone. How is everyone doing? We are a few minutes away to start our live session today. We're not ready, but if you can hear me say hey or say hello and tell me where you're from and start thinking of your questions for Kirsten Cable. Her presentation was all about creating a successful or starting a successful podcast. So start your questions if you have any. But if not, just start saying hello, where you're from. And we will start in a few minutes, in about 10 minutes or so. For now, just enjoy these animations. Look who's in the house. Kirsten's here. Now, Kirsten, last time I think we did a video, we have some matching colors, but today we are red and blue, which is fine. Yeah, that's okay. That's okay. But we are just here just to say a quick hello and let us know if you can hear us both. Let's see. Hello, hello, Kirsten. Yeah, so if you can hear us both across the ocean, let us know in the chat if you can hear us both, and we'll be right back. Let us know in the chat if you can hear us, say hi, where you're from, and if you have any questions for Kirsten, start popping them in the chat box. We'll be right back to start our live session today. And we are back. We are back for this live session for the Online Teacher Summit 2018, all about taking action. And in this summit, we also have several sessions that will help online teachers who have been teaching already and thinking of ways to expand their business and going from one-on-one to other ideas, and also ways to promote and market. And one of them is creating your successful podcast. And Kirsten can tell us all about it. Hi, Kirsten, how you doing? L- we'll double check now. Let's see. I check. I can hear you. I can hear you. Check. So let us know now. Can they hear you now?
Should I sing? Should I talk?
Ooh, can you
Should I
sing for
dance?
us?
I can. I don't know what. The only song I can think of is the sexy getting ready song from it's from a Netflix show called Crazy Ex-Girlfriend. It's really funny.
Okay.
And she has a song where she's getting ready and she's like, it's a sexy getting ready song. If
I
you can hear the sexy getting ready song, this is good.
I can hear you now, and I'm testing on my YouTube.
Okay.
So let's see if it's now. Lisa says yes, so I'm going to interpret that. I don't know if she's saying yes, I love that song, or yes, I can hear Kirsten. But anyways, now I can hear Kirsten. Perfect. So now they can hear.
Of course, you can hear me when I'm singing.
Now they can hear you. You know, I've been thinking of doing a bloopers of a fun reel for the summit, so I might need to include that. You are on record, Kirsten.
I'm so embarrassed. I'm like so red now.
You are red dress, red face. That's okay.
Red face, yeah. So
Well, let's start. How are you doing now that they can hear you? How are you doing?
I'm great. I just really psyched myself up in a really convenient way, didn't I?
Perfect.
I'm so excited to talk about podcasting. It's one of my favorite things as well.
Excellent. Okay. Well, since we're talking about podcasting and you have a podcast show, let's talk about a little bit about these origin stories that people love to hear. How did you
Yeah.
decide to start your podcast?
Oh, well, I kind of, oops, sorry, I just saw a question in the chat and I thought, oh, I'm just going to make a note. So, Malka, I've heard your question. I'll remember it.
We'll get
I'm
back to
helping
it. We'll get
Paulino
back.
out. Yeah. I didn't really plan to like make a podcast, but I've always been a podcast fan. I've always listened to podcasts. I remember like when I was still working my full-time job, I traveled a lot. And I remember listening, I was a big fan of This American Life, which is kind of the daddy of the podcasts. So if you've never heard This American Life, you may have heard Serial, which sort of kicked off everybody's love of podcasts. And Serial was a spin-off of This American Life. So this is really, it's an NPR American show. And I have loved this for about, I don't know, 12 years or something crazy. And so I've always loved podcasts, but I didn't really think, oh, I would do my own. And when I started teaching online, I very quickly realized that I love blogging. I love writing and sharing my opinions. I have a lot of knowledge and opinions about how to learn languages and how this big project that we are facing is best done. And I love talking about it. So that's what I blogged about. And I started doing interviews. So I invited these people. There was this guy called Mickey Mangan. He had a show called the Learn to Talk Show, just this sort of cool YouTube show. And I invited him on the show. But it wasn't a show, it just on the blog. I was like, hey, can I interview you? Can I talk to you? And he was like, yes, yes, yes. And after I recorded it all, then I listened back to it. And I transcribed it, or did what I thought was transcribing, which is I paraphrased it. I just put it in my own words. And then I put it online and I sent it back to him as well. And I said, hey, Mickey, here's your interview. And he said, you've made me sound really British. But he's from Chicago. So it just didn't really work. It didn't make any sense. And I thought, okay, fine. Next time, maybe I'll just record it and I still have to do the writing. And all this writing, transcribing and making a good transcript is a lot of work. So I was actually making myself work more than I needed to. And the people weren't as happy as if they can hear people's voices. So I thought, okay, next time I invited Jason Levine. You know him, Paulino, right?
Yes, I do.
And he's a rapper. So I thought, well, I can't do this. This is ridiculous. Okay, let's just record the whole thing. Recorded the whole thing. And then my website has always been on Squarespace. So I know that Squarespace is can do a lot of stuff you don't have to go and find plugins and things. It just can do a lot out of the box. So I just played around and it said, I put in this audio file. And then in the audio file, it said podcasting information. And I thought, oh, okay, podcasting. Da, da, da. So I typed in all this extra information. And then I realized, oh, that's the information that Squarespace wants to give to iTunes if you're making a podcast. I was like, a podcast, you say? I'm interested. And most of my technological like hosting and all that stuff was already included in the website I had, which means all of a sudden I had this blog article with audio in it, and without a lot of extra work, it was a podcast. And then I gave the RSS feed to iTunes, and before I knew it again, I was in iTunes. And that's how I started. So I started in the most, I still have interviews. It was an interview show and it started out, but I did all my own editing. I was just playing around, and that's how this show started. And that's about 4 years ago. And now this year I changed the name. It now has a much cooler, sexier name that people can actually remember. And we are on episode 83 now, and it's successful, and we've got a few thousand listeners all around the world, and I love it. So that's, I guess, the long story of how it started.
Well, congratulations. Congratulations. If you haven't noticed, Kirsten loves to talk. And that's one. But I'm not saying that in a shameful way. I think that's a great way because she's been working at this for a long time. And I didn't, before you plan an interview, you could say, hey, I'm going to ask you about this and that. Well, she knows what we're going to talk about, but I didn't say to her, I'm going to ask about your origin story, but she's ready for it. Okay. So with some people, you can do that. You can just put them on the spot in a kind of way. You don't want to really put someone on the spot in a bad way, but kind of ask a question like that. With others, you can. So before we go into some of the questions that I already see in the chat, I would like to address this idea of how do you prepare yourself as a presenter, and how do you help the person who's going to come along? You mentioned that people didn't know if they like their voices, who are going to come along, so that this interview works out and you get the most benefit out of it.
Over the years, I have learned a lot, I think, about interviewing. And the biggest lesson that I personally have taken in interviewing that has made me, I think, better is, you can almost imagine, is to shut up. So when I am interviewing somebody, I try my best to not cut in and interrupt and give my opinion on everything, which naturally I do. So in an interview, you want to give people the space. And over the years, I have learned people are more comfortable. If people are a little bit uncomfortable about coming on a podcast and being a guest, or coming on a live video and being a guest, it helps to tell them what you will talk about. So I do write some questions, and I research my guest a little bit, and then I might send them a few questions, but I say, we may not cover all of these. If you want to talk about something specific, just do. And to be honest, once they start talking, I ask a lot of questions like, oh, what do you mean by that? Tell me more about this. So I try to get more, and I try to also go to the emotion or something that I find interesting. But at the same time, every interview I do, it's still a conversation with me. So there is always me in the show. Do you know what I mean? So it's always like this, and I feel like that's because a podcast lives kind of through its host. So if somebody listens to my show, The Fluent Show, they like me if they keep listening. And if they don't like me, they will stop listening, because that just doesn't work, right? I am the constant in this show. If I'm preparing a different kind of episode where I'm not interviewing somebody, I do one of two things. Either I prepare the topic together with Lindsay, who is Lindsay Williams, who has a video in this summit too. And she is my co-host. So Lindsay is a regular guest. She's my friend, and she just comes around. It's like she and I catch up. We talk about what we've been up to, and then we have one topic. And we do have. I've been getting better at this as well. We do have some level of a script, so we know what we will cover. And beforehand, I say to her, "Okay, let's talk about apps. I sort of have these thoughts. What do you think?" And then we know, we sort of have like stops along the way, so we know where we are going. And we might discuss a news article. And if I do my own solo show and it's more focused, then I actually have a bit of a script, but I never read from a script. It's not my style. At best, I will do bullet points. I always want people to feel like I'm naturally just talking to them. So there you go, another long answer.
Perfect. Great. Good. So let's get into it. Let's get into some of these questions. I see some questions in the chat. Just so people I'll try my best to look at your questions. It's hard to follow a logical order. We're gonna try to answer them as best as we can. So, and we'll cover all the questions about podcasting. And in the end, if we have some time, if you have some general questions about online teaching or the business of online teaching, Kirsten can answer those as well. But let's get to some of those questions. And Diana says, I love your microphone, Kirsten. Can you tell us quickly what it is?
This microphone is by the company Rode, R-O-D-E. They make a lot of quality microphones. It's called Podcaster. So it's a Podcaster microphone. It's mounted on a boom arm that you can't really see. It's called a boom, but it basically means you have a thing where you can move it up and down, and that's quite cool. And this thing here, you don't have to buy it, but if you want to look cool, then you it's called a shock mount. And these different things, this helps me bring the microphone close to my mouth because you can tell it sounds better. And then I am not great at mic technique. I move around when I talk, which you shouldn't. So this helps me keep it quite close. This here helps when I accidentally hit the desk, you don't really hear that because normally that would show up in the audio. So this is all stuff that you don't really need when you're starting. I already had the microphone. This microphone is not cheap. I have some recommendations for cheaper mics if you want to hear it. This is something that my husband bought. So I already had this when I started. However, this is also 6 years old and it works like on day one. So sometimes investing in good stuff. This Rode company is not cheap, but they make really good stuff.
Perfect. Thank you.
I will try and give a short answer. I promise.
That's okay. That's okay. I mean, you mentioned that you were listening to NPR, and I listen to a lot of NPR. And one of the things that I like about their shows is that they don't give short, simple answers. They explain and they tell a little bit of the story. And you said, if you only said, this is an expensive mic, and you end there, people say, okay, I'm not going to buy it. But now you give us the reason. It worked from day one. It keeps working after all these years. And sometimes we invest in a cheaper mic and then we are frustrated because it keeps failing or stuff like that. So those things are important to know, don't you think?
Yeah, I used to have a cheap boom arm. And because this microphone is very heavy, heavier than most cheap microphones, it would hang down like this. So I had to like talk like this, and that was because I didn't want to spend the extra $40. And now, since I've had this thing, it's perfect. It's just so much better. So you are so true.
Great, and you just hit the mic and we didn't hear anything, so that was great. I would like to ask a question from Marga. She says, I would like to know a bit more where to find information about writing scripts for podcast and the different formats. We did talk about some formats during our interview. You can maybe refer to those. And she says, are there any blogs, websites, or books that we could have a look at? Any recommendations?
Okay, there is a big name in this area called, it's the man who does Entrepreneur on Fire. I don't really like his style, so I don't follow anything really he does. I haven't looked, but he will certainly have some good stuff. The way I do a script is, like I said, I write bullet points, and especially when you are starting, you should be open to abandoning half of your script halfway through if you are tied to a specific length, right? So if you're thinking I'm making a 20-minute show and you're writing a script that's like this, maybe you are very focused and you will get through it, but maybe you won't, and you have to learn your own style. That's why there's no perfect answer to this, but writing a script, to me, I had a lot of experience from blogging, and that helps. So you want to kind of say, what is the question? And then if there is anything about the question that is generally interesting. So for example, one of my recent episodes was, what is a reasonable schedule for language learning for the week? And I said at the start, I really like this word reasonable, and it talks about our mindset. So I kind of gave a little preface, and then I talk about the actual tips. And then at the end, you just want to say something to wrap it up. The only time I really write out my script is when I am talking about my sponsors. You know, when I'm doing an advertisement, I like to have something to fall back on. But with podcasting, you can try as many times as you like. So it's not a big problem. And the format lends itself to speaking in a more natural way so that people listen to you naturally, like as if it's NPR, like as if it's the radio, and it's okay to say or to make a mistake sometimes.
Great. And we do have a couple of questions that are kind of related that have to do with a website, if I can find that. There, here we are. So one question is from Diana, what are the best sites to host podcasts and how much does it cost if you have any information? And also someone says, what platform was your website on? I think you mentioned it, but if you can remind us a little bit.
My website is still on Squarespace, and it has been for 5 years, and I'm happy with Squarespace for the basic website. And Squarespace also lets you host your podcast files if that's what you want. So they include quite a lot of bandwidth. That's quite nice. Other hosting companies I know that people use are Libsyn and SoundCloud. I am not a fan of the look of SoundCloud. Libsyn seems to be quite reliable. I don't know. The site that I use, I switched from Squarespace after 4 years, after over 60 episodes. So Squarespace, if you have it already, it's good enough. Really good enough. And now I use something called Fireside, and that is fireside.fm. And it costs $19 a month. And I think it's fantastic. And it also lets you build your own little website that hosts your show, and people can click around. It has what you want is something where you can embed the player, you know, so it gives you a code that you can put into your website so people can press play in your website. And you want something that gives you a good feed, and because RSS feed is really important, because that's what you give to iTunes. So my website for the show is fluent.show, so you can see what a Fireside website looks like.
Great. So, and I'll post
do you want me to put those in the...
Yeah, I have it.
Okay, cool.
So fluent.show, people can check it out. Hopefully after this live session. Don't go there right now, but fluent.show. And great. Thank you for that answer. And we have a question from Jessica. What are the benefits on making a podcast rather than video?
It's a little bit, well, I would say it's a little bit less work. But I don't know if that's 100% true, because Lindsay, my friend, is obviously a YouTuber more than I am, and I think we work equally. Like, to make a podcast sound really great, if you have guests, it can be a lot of work too. So the benefits of having a podcast, I don't compare them. I think it's a different thing. I love podcasts because people can download it and then they can go for a walk or they can cook and they don't have to watch anything, and they just have your voice with them, the sound. And also it's very personal because you are right in people's ears. That's a very personal connection to build with people. And the radio has accompanied us for over 100 years, and podcasts are the future of radio.
Okay. And how do you think, I think we had another question on Facebook similar to that, which was about the disadvantages of podcasts compared to blogs in terms of content. So how do you think it compares to have a podcast than just a regular blog?
I wonder how. I think both of those have their advantages, and just like I said before, you can't really compare them like that because they are so different. You know, they're like such different things. But I do both. Like, those are my main content areas really, blogging and podcasting. A podcast is different because podcasts are unique, I think, because people don't have to look at a screen while they consume it. They can do everything else. So your listener just has that much more freedom. And that's one thing that I love about it. And the other thing that I really love about podcasting is that people get to hear my voice and I can talk to them. And it's easier because people are more free. It's easier to make something that is a little bit longer, so it goes a bit deeper. So a lot of my episodes are an hour long, and I think that is a good length for a podcast. But for a video, people go, oh, I have to look at this for an hour, and they get distracted. So with a podcast, you can give your audience more freedom, and they can fit you into their life. Our lives are so busy already. They can fit you into their life better.
Great. And Cultural Alemán no Brazil is asking, how big is your team, or do you do everything alone?
I do most things alone, but I have, let me think. Just for podcasting, I have got my co-host, Lindsay, who is kind of in the team. She basically, her job is to just come and talk. But okay, what do? I book my guests, I book my sponsors, I inform my sponsors, I record the episodes, I make the notes for the episodes. I often write a blog article that goes along with the episode, so you have it in 2 formats. I do all of that by myself. I had a designer who helped me produce the artwork that we have now, but I make the graph, for like a normal little cover, I make my own graphic. It's easy, but I had a designer who came up with the original concept, and that was important, I think. It's when you look in iTunes, all you see is pictures, so pictures are important. And I have an editor who is my husband, and he edits all the shows where I have a guest, and they just sound so much better than if I do it myself. But I do edit my own solo shows because that's relatively straightforward.
Okay, so talking about editing, let's get a little technical. What are you using to edit your shows? What recommendations do you have? We did have a question on Facebook asking about programs for Windows. And so how do you edit your shows?
When I record a solo show, I have a Mac. I record straight into GarageBand. I have already got a template set up with my intro music and my outro music. And because it's only one track, when there's only one person talking, you don't really get the noise from another person. So because I have a good system here, as long as I don't move around, that's fine. And then I edit in GarageBand, which is a program software that comes free with your Mac, and it's pretty easy to use. So I would recommend GarageBand. It's good enough to start you off, definitely. I also encode the podcast with a free program called Forecast. That's Forecast. And that doesn't really do anything fancy, except it makes your podcast into an MP3 that's, I think, as small as it can be. That's important because then when people download it on a cell phone signal, then it's a little bit faster. My husband, however, uses, when we have guests, any interviews, I use Call Recorder for Skype. Call Recorder then goes to my husband, who will use Audacity to clean up some of the audio and make some edits. And he also uses, Audacity is free and you can get it on Windows and on the Mac. He complains a lot about how ugly it is. So I think he means it has a learning curve. And he uses something called Ferrite Recording Studio or something. That's Ferrite. And that's actually an app on the iPad. And I've seen him use it. It looks really good. It can do a lot of really cool things, like cut out when there's a long pause on one side. So you cut out all the pauses so he can skip straight to bits where somebody goes, and all those things, and you can take them all out so it sounds better. and there's so many little things with, I am lucky because I am married to a person who is very detail oriented.
We do have a question about that. Someone says, Cultural Aleman says, so I need an editor as a husband. So can you tell us where can we find a husband or wife to edit our podcast?
Oh, in a nightclub in Preston, you can. No, he's a programmer by trade. So if you look around, techie guys. But I have found really good editors actually on. Well, you can look around on Fiverr, but the problem on Fiverr is that you don't really have people on there for a long time. But they are good, and I have found a few really good people on Upwork.com. So if you don't have an editor husband, it's affordable-ish to get somebody to help you.
Great. And talking about finding resources like someone to edit your podcast, what about sound clips or jingles and music that you kind of help to brand your shows? Diana was asking, or I think Sabine was asking about sample
Sabine.
Music. Huh?
Noch eine Deutsche, glaube ich. Another German, I think. Sabine. Bist du? Weiß ich nicht. Sagst du einfach, ne?
I'm not sure, but she can tell us. So some music clips. I know that I listen to a few podcasts, and almost all of them have at least a music at the beginning that kind of says, oh yes, this is the blah 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 show. But some other people like to do some transitions with music or applause. I'm not really fan of a lot of the what are they called?
The stingers.
But a little bit of music, maybe to the beginning or stuff like that. Any ideas how to find those, especially to use those without any fear of copyright infringement and stuff like that?
That's important. You have to be aware about the copyright issues. But I mean, if your podcast is small and you start with 500 listeners, I mean, who cares? But you don't want to get big and still be doing that. I would recommend, if you have GarageBand, just start there. It has so many sounds built in, and lots of sounds, lots of different ones. Don't go too crazy, like Paulino said, but you can play, definitely. I have found my new theme music on freemusicarchive.org, but because I have a sponsor, so in principle my show is commercial, because I have a sponsor, I then got in touch with the band and I said, hey, can I use this? Are you happy for me to use this? And we did a licensing deal, so now I have an official license to use this, and actually it was $25, so it was worth the money. And that was the song I wanted. It was a really good song. But freemusicarchive.org, if you want theme music, you want to play around, it's a great place to look. And actually, for the many years, my jingle was something that one of my friends had composed. He was a musician and he made CDs anyway. So I just said, hey, will you do me 15 seconds of piano? And yes, he did. So if you have musician friends, ask. They will do it, maybe.
Great. So we have several choices. Asking a friend, just make sure that you explain how you're going to use it. You don't just like record this for me and then you use it without permission. So you still want to keep that friendship intact. Looking for some music that is free of copyrights in some of those websites. Just make sure to read the fine lines and do a quick licensing with maybe a small band. And you just mentioned if you're small with 500 listeners, you don't need to worry too much about it. But what if you do want to get big? Or how do you know? One of our questions here is there a way you know how many people are listening to your podcast? So talk a little bit about the analytics behind it.
Yes. The analytics come with your hosting company. So Libsyn does analytics, and so does Fireside. I think Fireside, they say, because it's built by a podcaster. The guy who has built this platform runs his own podcasting business. So he said, I want the best stats. So he says he has the best data in the business. I don't know. But anyway, your hosting service should tell you. Squarespace is a little bit, I don't really believe the numbers that they give me. Sometimes it can be something like, it measures the downloads and not the plays. So if somebody downloads your show onto their phone and they never hit play, that still counts as a download. But if you just want to know how many people are listening, those are good enough. They're close enough numbers to start. If you are not getting the statistics from your existing host, you can also go to a website called Podtrac. That's podtrac.com. I used them for many, many years. And I just gave them the Squarespace feed, and then they come back and tell you that. But the best way to know if people like it and to know if it's doing well is to ask people to review it in iTunes.
Perfect. Great. So we've been talking now for about more 30 minutes. We have a couple more minutes for you. If you have any other podcasting questions, please feel free to do that. But also, if you have general questions, we only have time for one or two about online teaching. Let's take advantage. Kirsten is in the house. And while you think about those questions, I would like to ask Kirsten to tell us, what are you working on these days? You are an entrepreneur who always have lots of projects, I imagine. But what's going on in your life these days? Is anything coming up that our audience here might be interested in?
There are a few things that I'm working on at the moment, and I'm sort of bouncing ideas. So I'm in a market research phase for Project One. I am 60% through a big project that is a German course together with Ollie from iwillteachyoualanguage.com. So that's a very big German course, and it's story based, so it'll be absolutely exciting. Yeah, you can find out more about that at germanuncovered.com. And for my teachers, I am more and more doing individual coaching and mentoring and advice sessions. So if you guys are interested at all in anything like that, if you want to meet me maybe once a week for a short while, we'll set your goals and we'll sort of get you going. I've been doing one-to-one coaching, and it's really helped people who are kind of stuck on their brand, who have a specific goal and kind of want to go further. And you can find me just at my website. Just get in touch. I'm not advertising this too much. And I would love for you to download the freebie that I gave to Paulino. So hopefully you've done that already.
Yeah.
That's a lot of stuff.
Yeah, that's what happens to us. We not only are very active in different places, but we have all kinds of interest, and it's kind of also the nature of the entrepreneur online, right?
Yes.
That we kind of double into a couple of things. But I want to mention that one reason that you're able to have all these many projects going on, and I have seen some of your other projects before, and of course you were a presenter, a speaker last year, is because you have a very solid foundation on being an entrepreneur and working online, and you have a lot of experience with all these systems. Of course, I would not recommend to someone who's just starting to teach online to set up with their students and think of a podcast and write their 10,000 blogs and start an online course. That's something that maybe in the future, when you have systems in place that allows you to have maybe a little more time to work on different topics. But other than that, we need to make sure that what we're doing, if right now teaching one-on-one is our goal, that it's working well to keep going.
Yeah, definitely. I didn't, I say I started a podcast such a long time ago, but I never thought I'm going to start a podcast. I literally just thought, this is fun. And I wouldn't have done it otherwise. And it really shows. I've done a lot of stuff when you add it all up. But I remember writing my first book and how exciting it was, but also like how nervous I was when I did that, and just putting it out there and things, and how much I've learned, until now, is extremely valuable. And I have done, so much online teaching, and I still do a little bit of online teaching, but overall, my big brand is probably not so much the German teaching one-to-one anymore.
Now, Kirsten, it just occurs to me, thinking about all these projects and related to, I was looking to see if there were any other questions, and I reread someone asking about video. I love to do videos, and obviously I do a lot of videos interviews, which you have done
Yeah.
as well, or you have done also for a while many live sessions where you just sit there and gives all this wonderful value.
Yeah.
Have you ever converted that video experience and extract the audio and incorporate it into your podcast?
Never.
Okay, tell me more. Tell me more about that. I'm gonna use your strategy. Tell me more about it.
Well, two reasons. Number one, if you take the audio out of something that is a YouTube video, normally the quality isn't as good because it's already been compressed, so you don't sound as good. Whereas like all the, like if you've got something like this, you've got this beautiful, expensive rigmarole here, you kind of want to sound good as well. And I personally, I think I interact slightly differently when I am on camera rather than on mic. I think there is a slight difference in the personality, and I really like the audio format so much. It's not that I hate how I look or something like that, but when I'm on video, I'm a bit different. I do, however. Do you want me to show you what I've just bought?
Yes, please.
Okay, I'll show you. Okay. I'm sort of assembling my little on the road kit. So I've just purchased a little tripod, and it comes with an attachment for a smartphone, because these days smartphones are good, aren't they? And I have this, which I have not used before. It's a microphone that it talks. It's a Rode. So this is Rode company. It's a microphone that clips onto your clothing, and you can plug it into your phone. So hopefully then you can sound better on video. But something I really don't personally like is when people record their podcast, but then they also put it on YouTube. I don't know, I just never watched that. But I'm not a YouTube person. The only thing I watch on YouTube really is yoga videos. So, where I want to see it. But if I have no reason to show people something, it's not my style probably to do that. You would have to convince me. Don't know. Have you thought about it, Paulina?
I think it depends on the content. I think it depends on the content, and sometimes I do want to, like for example here, and just to show off that I also have. I just put it on. It's not connected. I'm using the headset, but I do have a little
microphone twins.
A little gear there. But I think it depends on the experience that you want to give. So, for example, here at the online teacher summit, sometimes I get my summits mixed up, but at the online teacher summit, we are having this conversation, and it's great for people to see us, that we are real people here. But as you said, if you want to consume the content or listen to it later on, you don't want to be you don't necessarily have to be watching the video this way. So that's why with the premium pass, for those of you who got the premium pass, thank you so much, because that way you also support the online teacher summit. That's why I like to give the option to provide the audio, and it's basically creating my own podcast of the summit, right? So people who upgrade their free ticket to the premium pass not only get access to the lifelong access to I like to do this gesture, lifelong access, like life goes that way. Now, lifelong access to the free sessions. They get access to the advanced sessions that are not part of the free ticket, but also they get the audio at the end of the week. They will see that there is the audio version of all the videos, and that you can download and listen on the go.
That is really good. And I think I've just thinking when you were talking as well. Well, first of all, it's always really good to get some kind of. I really like the audio because you can just listen to people, and you don't need this. You lose a level of interaction in a way, but at the same time, it frees you up to bring it into your life more. To me, it's more personal if you just have audio, even though it's not as much stuff. But to me personally, I think it's more personal. The only context where I think it would be really useful is if you are teaching language. Video is extremely useful, and in my video courses, they are video courses. They're not audio courses, but I would do the audio format a lot differently. But it could be that you have a video where you're explaining something and you give somebody the audio as well. I think for explanations, this works.
Great. Perfect. Let me do a last quick check if we have any general questions out there. And we do have one more question. How many hours per week do you put into producing your podcast?
Oh, I would say maybe it depends on what kind of show I'm making. It depends if I am making a blog article out of it. But imagine you put in, and it depends on who you are, right? I can write a script. If I am just doing a short solo episode, I will write a script and record the episode, and I usually do one take, so it doesn't take that long. It takes about as long as the episode, plus minus 10 minutes. So that's maybe an hour, hour and a half. And editing the episode doesn't take me that long because I don't know much fancy stuff that I could be doing. So I try to just get the input as good quality as I can. And then it saves you a lot of time on the edit. And then, so if I'm just doing a quick solo episode, I can probably get it out there in under 3 hours, I would say. Depending on if I'm writing the blog article to go with it, that's another hour. If I'm doing an interview, it depends very much. But it does take a lot longer because I will record maybe an hour and I will chat to the person, and I'm chatty, so things take forever. And the research takes maybe an hour or so, depends on who I'm talking to. And then I listen again, and now I listen again when a little bit faster. So I listen again. Maybe that's 1 more hour. And the reason I listen to it again is so that I can tell my husband at 7 minutes and 5 seconds after the word so and so, please cut out this, or here there was a big noise. And it's that's how my marriage stays happy, right? Because otherwise I can't say to him, at 7 minutes there's this thing where I was laughing and it's stupid, and can you just fix it? He says, no, what exactly do you want? So you have to be very precise when you're working with an editor. It's good training for me. And then for him, the edit depends very much on how good the audio is from the other person. I always sound good because I have all this, and I get in trouble when I don't. But the other person, if they noises, if they have like this kind of thing, if maybe they have this kind of thing, if maybe they are clicking, and if they're going on the internet, you can hear they're clicking. He doesn't like that. So this here, he wants all of that out. So he will spend up to 5-6 hours on the episode trying to make it sound as good as possible. But normally, if you're just doing like a quick and dirty, it could be anything between 2 and 10 hours. we once did an episode, I kid you not, where the edit alone, because we didn't really know, I knew I knew my vision, but we both didn't know how to do it. And we were cutting lots of audio together. And I think that probably took about 3 days.
Wow.
So it's up to you. I hope this answers your question.
Wow.
How long is a piece of string?
Wow, yeah. So it all depends on the kind of podcast you're doing, and as you said, if you're involving other people and you have someone else editing. So the more people is the more communication, the more time. So that is also maybe something to consider. If someone is starting, they might want to start with something on their own and just to get the experience and then branch out to interviews. But it all depends on each person's visions and goals. And talking about goals, my next goal is to get a cup of coffee before the next live session will start in about 10 minutes. So, and also I want to honor your time and say thank you so much for spending time with us. We got lots of questions about podcasting. I'm so excited because we were thinking, maybe this is a little niche. People might not be interested, but we got a lot of interest here because it's something that could potentially help you promote. I actually know a few students that find teachers through their podcast, and it's a great way to have a connection with them. Yes, so we'll leave it at that because we're gonna take a short break, about 10 minutes. If you're here on the live page, you can stay here, also get your cup of coffee, and we'll be back with Jennifer Preston in about 10 minutes. So Kirsten, thank you so much for your time. Always nice, always lovely to talk to you, and we'll talk some other time soon.
Yes, definitely. And by the way, if you get the podcast mini guide, there's a list in there of like things that people should never hear on your podcast. So things like, I don't know, dogs barking and all that. So there's a list of, this is the worst you can do.
Oh, sorry about that. Okay, thank you, Kirsten, and I'll be taking a little break here for everyone who's watching. If you have, coffee break, everyone, coffee break. If you have any questions about the summit itself, if you have any questions about upgrading to the premium pass, I'll be around to answer them. But in about 8 minutes or so, we'll have Jennifer Preston. Thank you, everyone. I'll see you in a couple minutes, or more like 8, but you know what I mean. See you soon.
Bye.
Hello, hello. I know we are on coffee break. Yes, we are. But I wanted to tell you that Jennifer Preston is in the house. Hello, Jennifer.
Hi, Paulino. How are you?
I'm doing great. So you can let us know if you can hear us both. Hopefully, yes. And start thinking while you're drinking your coffee, start thinking of your questions. If you have seen Jennifer's session, how to automate student management and increase your profit, that's great. You can ask more questions about that, more specific questions, and also any other questions related to teaching online and online business. Remember that all our speakers at the Online Teacher Summit are online teachers and entrepreneurs, so they can talk about their experience as well. So we'll see you in about 4 minutes. Deal?
Sounds good.
Great. Don't go anywhere. Coffee break, but be back. Be back or you'll lose this session. See you soon. are back. Coffee break is over. This is the 2018 Online Teacher Summit, our second live session of Thursday, April 5th with Jennifer Preston. So, hello, Jennifer. How are you?
Hi, Paulina. Fine, fine. Thank you.
Awesome. Now, people can see your interview. Hopefully, they've seen it already, but if they haven't, after this live session, go and check Jennifer's interview on the sessions page, which is all about. Tell us, what is your interview about?
I like to talk about how to onboard new private students for maximum profitability. That means how to onboard them the right way, to give the right impression, and to set up sort of a package of what you're going to teach them, which I think is a lot more valuable to your students than just saying, let's meet every Wednesday at 5 p.m. Offering them a package that gets them to a goal is worth a lot more to them, and they'll pay a lot more for it. So that's what I talk about.
Great. So if you haven't seen that yet, go after this live session, go and watch it. But if you're here, if you're live with us, say hi in the chat and type your question for Jennifer, especially if you're new and you're thinking of how this online thing work. She can help you with that, or she can answer your questions. In fact, Jennifer, I would like to ask you, how was your transition? Did you teach in a classroom before, being online?
Yes, I did. Yeah, I started out working for two different schools, and then for one of the schools, there was sometimes I'd have a full classroom, sometimes I've had small classrooms, and sometimes even one-on-one students, but they paid for me through the school. And one student had to go away for business. And so she asked if I could teach her online, or if any teacher could teach her online. And they didn't have any teacher for that. And so I somehow got recruited to do it. And I was so nervous. I remember the video didn't work. We couldn't share screens, so I was typing into the Skype chat box, and it was just audio, and it was fine. But the first time was very, very scary for me. After that, we figured out the tech. It was quite easy. And then my school started to think, there are some students who live, outside the city. They live in villages and they can't travel all the way to Prague. I live in Prague, Czech Republic. And so they started to get ideas like, don't worry, if you need to stay in your hometown, you can still have Skype lessons with one of our big city teachers. And that's kind of how they started doing the online work for the school. And so in a way, it was a lot less intimidating for me because I was sort of breaking new ground with the school. And so one of the things that I recommend when you're trying to get started teaching online is maybe try it out with someone that you already teach. Let's say you have meetings once or twice a week. Say, is it okay if we try a Skype lesson this one day? That you're going to find that they really like the convenience of it. It knocks off the travel time. They can do it from their office on their lunch break, and it becomes more convenient for you. So sometimes we think of online teaching as reaching out to people in China and to Switzerland and South America, but you can start it out and become familiar with it with someone who already knows you. So that's how I would suggest to sort of get started.
Great. And you mentioned, can you remind me how long ago was this first experience that you had online?
It was about 3 years ago.
Okay.
I've been teaching for 6 years total. And then in the last 2 years, I've been able to teach 100% online. And my husband has to travel to different countries for work. And so now I'm able to go with him. And I just take my, equipment, my few things with me. And I'm able to teach, keep the same students, keep the continuity. And it works really great with that lifestyle.
Right. And, even 3 years ago, the technology for doing video conference, it was there, of course, but it has improved tremendously. And not only that, but more people are more comfortable with that because we have FaceTime and WhatsApp and Snapchat. So we have more of a culture of connecting through video. Before that, I know that many students would say, oh, I don't know, how is that going to work? It's not the same. But now the culture is changing and people are more used to this connection through video. But even that said, you said that things didn't work out that well that first time. What would you
Yeah.
recommend for a teacher that is going to have their first session with a student, knowing what you know now, to be a little more prepared? Things could happen always, and you
Yeah.
have to be ready for that. But would
Mhm.
you suggest to someone who's doing maybe their first or second online session?
Okay, so it was a little difficult for me at first to start with a beginner lesson on Skype, because when I teach, I'm very, I'm kind of like a ham. I'm kind of an actor in the classroom, and you feel a little constrained when you're just in a box. So it's helpful to make yourself comfortable. Try to find a student that's maybe at a little bit higher level that you can actually converse with. So that's the first thing. Um, I personally like to do some screen sharing. A lot of pictures that I can, just get from Google and throw them up into sort of a PowerPoint. And it's very easy. I simply use Skype. I know it's kind of old fashioned, but you can share your screen. I would call someone back home if you live abroad, or call anyone on Skype and just run through the first couple slides, or just practice the first little bit of your lesson. This also helps you if you do a little bit of preparation for your lesson. You're going to realize that an in-person lesson is different. It's a different medium. You can't just pass out a worksheet. You're going to have a worksheet in your hand and you're going to think, how do I get this to my student? And it's no fun for an online student to be filling in exercises. That's not the type of lesson that this is. So do a fake lesson with a friend, 10 minutes, and just have them give you a little bit of feedback. And it's mainly so that you understand how you can convey. What are you going to use for a Blackboard? How are you going to error correct them? Like I said, that first lesson, maybe the first couple lessons, I use the Skype chat box as my typing lesson. And I actually have an online Czech teacher who lives in Mexico, but she teaches me Czech. And she just uses the Skype chat box for the notes, for the corrections. Now I get a little bit more sophisticated. I know how to go into Keynote or PowerPoint and sort of use it as a blackboard to show my students what they're doing wrong. But figure out how you're going to do that. Is it going to be a Word document? What are you going to use to supplement what would have been a board? Maybe you can set up a board. If your camera's clear enough, if the lighting's good enough, maybe that's what you can do. But I just recommend just running through it like anything. Just practice, and then it'll help you visualize what you can do for the lesson.
Great. Excellent. And Diana just mentioned in the chat that she loved your presentation, and I know that other people have commented on your not only the interview, the content, but also the presentation as well.
Thanks.
It's visually stunning. I really liked it. And she has a question because in your interview you talked about working with packages and especially creating 3 versions of the package that you offer to your student or client. So can you talk a little more? How do you prepare these 3 versions of the packages?
Great question. And I tried to put as much in that presentation as I could get out in the short time possible. But I do talk about this in my freebie. So if you go to vulingo.com, it's vulingo.com/goals. There's a free course. Take about an hour and a half of your time. But all the freebies I mentioned are in there. And I talk a lot about it. So to summarize, you want to create a 3 package deal. There's some psychology about 3 options. You assume that they will choose the middle package. That's what people usually go for. That is going to be your goal rate for the amount of classes that you are proposing. So let's say you have a 3-month package once a week. That's 12 lessons. And you want your goal rate to be $20. That is going to be what you offer for package number 2. For package number 1, it's just going to be hourly lessons. but it's going to be a little bit higher. So let's say the cost of that is $25. And these are just, who knows what your market rate is. We're just talking, I'm using these numbers just for the sake of math. So the first package is going to be, I can teach you an hour every week, but it's $25 and you need to pay me. Or you can buy this package, and the package is something special because I help you plan out a syllabus step by step with these 2 forms I talked about. The students fill in these forms, they come back to you, they show you what they need to know, all of the holes in their knowledge or what level they need to start at. And they also show you their goals. Why do they need to learn English or any language for that matter? If they need to learn a language for business, but they're a beginner, they don't want the lesson about the zoo animals. They probably don't want the lesson about the colors. But we have a habit of saying, okay, they're beginners, we'll start them out with beginning themes. It's possible to create a syllabus with the themes that are important to them at whatever level they might be. And this is very valuable to them because if they went to just a regular course with other beginners, they'd be getting a lot of information that, frankly, they don't have time to spend a lot of time learning. So this is package 1, package 2. Package 3 is basically the package 2, the 3-month package, but you can add bonuses. What are bonuses? They are short videos that I show you how to make incredibly easily. Don't be scared by this. You make them with your computer and simple free software. You can make digital flashcards. You can make easy recordings on your phone, tablet, or computer. And in this free course that I have for you at viewlingo.com/goals, I have step-by-step instructions how to do these bonuses. Now, the good thing about these bonuses is they're tailored to the particular lesson, but you're not doing a lot of extra work for each student. So once I've recorded something that helps my student discover the difference between past simple and present perfect, which is very confusing for a lot of students, that is online and ready to send again and again to every student that I have. So that's what I'm talking about with these bonuses. These are these extra things that don't cost me a lot of extra time and effort, and that's an even higher price package. But if you're interested, I have this all in detail at viewlingo.com/goals.
Cool. And I'm glad you're mentioning that link that I already posted in the chat. Someone says, I would like to say a huge thank you to Jennifer for her gift. I have already done the course and it was so helpful, very generous. Thanks. So that's
good. I'm glad.
That's awesome. You have some great feedback there. And I do have a question from Joanne Nicholson. You already answered part of it, but maybe if you can address the goals part a little more. Her question is about the initial assessment. Do you find that students have given their learning goals a great deal of thought? And if not, does the intake form help them to identify what language skills they have and what they still need? You addressed this a little bit. Maybe you can expand. And I'm interested in hearing more about students' goals because usually they'll say, I want to be fluent in a language, okay? And so does the form help, or sometimes we need to do a little more coaching to help them with their goals?
Yes. Well, the form helps a lot. And like I said, I recommend sort of you're going to have to introduce yourself at some point, a 10 to 15 minute conversation at whatever level it can be. But yes, you're absolutely correct that a student will often identify their goal as, I want to learn English. Obviously, I want to learn English. Well, let me look at myself. I want to learn Czech right now. I don't need to learn. I've been living in Czech Republic for 6 years, still learning a lot of the language. I don't need to learn Czech for my job. I don't really need to learn Czech to live and exist in Prague. There's a lot of English being spoken here, and I can get by with my basic Czech. I want to learn Czech to meet people. I want to learn Czech to make friends. And so the type of language that what my teacher needs to know is that goal. So it's not going to be sort of work English. It's going to be more relationships. And it's not that she's saying, well, this word is business, so we don't need to learn this. No, she's gearing our conversations around, a day at the beer garden, or this lesson is going to be what you do when someone comes to visit. How do you introduce them to your Czech friends? Or it's coming up with the themes that are related to why I want to learn. So, I sound like I'm delineating or putting English into categories. This is a fun word and this is a work word. And that's not really what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to help you come up with ideas for the lessons. I mean, one problem, and this is why my system Trello for TEFL is really good. This is the organization system that if you bought the Premier Pass and you went to the second session, I talk a lot about this. It helps you keep track of everything that you've taught your students, the themes, what that certain lesson was about. Because as you start to get more and more students and your calendar fills up, I swear to you, you will be running out the door to teach a lesson, or if you're online, you will be dialing up with your students and you will think to yourself, did I talk about shopping at the grocery store with this student last week? I can't remember. I know I talked about it with someone. You need to be organized. You need to sort of have a plan listed out for your student, and also to tell them what you're going to study next. You don't want to just them to feel like you're just showing up and say, okay, let's speak in English. You want them to feel like they're paying for someone who has their goal in mind. I kind of went round with that answer. I hope that helped.
No, that's okay. Lots of examples and lots of explaining, because I like that you're giving examples, and like you said, I'm trying to give you ideas. You have your method. You have arrived and found these ways that work for you, and maybe they will work for many people. But hopefully, participants at the Online Teacher Summit are also looking at this diverse group of people, how different people are achieving good results in different ways, and get inspired, and you follow what works for you,
Yes.
Now, going back to your presentation, you mentioned Trello, and someone asked, I love the Trello board for organizing students and lessons, but I worry about losing content if it suddenly closes down. I assume that he or she is referring to Trello going away, like sometime it happens with different apps. So what's your plan B?
The problem of our modern age.
What's your plan B, Jennifer?
Oh my gosh. Well, now I'm going to find one. There might be an option to print out what you have in Trello, and I'm going to find it. And if I find it, I'm going to put it in the course for sure. I don't worry too much about that. They've been around for a while. And I mean, it's a good question, but it's kind of like Google, what if Facebook? I mean, Facebook is having a lot of problems right now, and the people who've invested a lot in becoming and having presence on Facebook for their businesses are now suddenly worried people are leaving. So yes, it's always a problem, but it just functions better than paper notebooks. It really does, because paper notebooks aren't responsive. I write things all day long, like, oh, don't forget to study. My student keeps mistaking articles, and that note is never seen again. So that's why I use this system.
Right. Now,
but I will look for an answer.
You will look for an answer. Well, I might have part of an answer for you right now.
Okay.
Because before, let me ask you and maybe clarify, the way that I understand is that you organize information on Trello. But for example, a lesson, and you explained this in your video, a lesson, it's just the link. When you have a lesson on present tense or whatever, it's a link to maybe Google Slides that have that lesson, correct?
Yes,
It's not that your slides are inside Trello. You have the link to...
Thank you.
So that way, you're not losing that information, correct?
No. Thank you for clarifying and bringing me back to my own system. So what I do in Trello, it's very possible to upload things to the Trello card and they're housed in Trello. But what I teach you how to do is everything is on Google. And Google and Trello have this sharing arrangement, and everything is then on your Trello card as a link or as a graphic, as an image, and it goes and it's on Google. Now, why don't I just put everything on Google? Why don't I just house my materials on Google and then that's the end of the day? Because the beauty of the Trello for TEFL system is it shows you, I have cards for every single sort of grammar point, every collection of lexis, collection of vocabulary, theme, everything. But every student is different. And I need to know out of this collection, what student needs what and when. And so that's how this interacts. Also on each of those cards, I have descriptions of the grammar point, how to teach it best, maybe how to compare it with a different grammar point, common mistakes that people make with this, and example sentences. So maybe you've been online or in the classroom and you think to yourself, okay, how do I explain this? And the example sentences aren't coming to your mind and it's just not clear. So I have created these perfect example sentences and you can add your own, modify mine. So all you have to do when you're going to teach this lesson is the information is right there. And you add the exercises. I have some exercises and lesson plans in there, but you add to your own and sort of make them your own.
Great. So that's, that's part of the answer to people who are concerned about losing content. You don't have the content right there. It's linked to your Google. I don't think Google is going to go away for the foreseeable future. We'll see. But Trello, I don't know. I think it's a pretty solid company. But for people who follow a little bit of the life of startups and tech companies, what I'm pretty sure might happen, hopefully it won't go away, but if it does, usually it's not like tomorrow, let's off, but they will say, unfortunately, we need to close, we are gonna close. So you would have time to find some other way, and they do have an exporting system, so you can export your data in a spreadsheet. I think they have several options, and that's usually what most responsible companies do when they are when they have to close. They give you a way to export your information. So I would not be too worried about that, but there are ways to be safe about it as well.
And Trello, just sorry to interrupt you, Trello is, it's not meant for teachers per se, it's a project management software. So huge companies use Trello. And I mean, it's so much more powerful than even what we use it for. You can add team members to stuff, deadlines, everything, and cards can move. And it's quite interesting, but I go through what you need step by step along with all of the template boards that I give you. I believe there are 6 template boards, and I show you exactly how to use them so you can get started in a weekend.
Great. And someone asked, how many students can you give one-on-one classes in a month if you are super organized with your time like you do with Trello? So I would like you to talk a little bit about that, and also talk about your goals as a teacher for having lots of students in a month.
Sure. Well, when I first started teaching and I had 2 jobs at 2 schools, I had been working in law firms, over 40 hours a week. And so I thought I can teach 40 hours a week. And I think any teacher with any knowledge at all knows that that's absurd because of the amount of time and effort that goes into planning lessons. It gets easier as you teach more, but I found that I was planning half an hour, maybe more, for every hour that I taught. As I got a little bit better, that time went down. So a 60-minute lesson, I was working 90 minutes. But once you start to eliminate the need to plan, I cannot tell you how many times I taught Present Perfect. And I was in a school at this time. And I'm going through the books. Where was that exercise? Where was that thing? That was that really good exercise. Which book was it in? Did I scan it? Is it in my email? Did I make a copy in my cubbyhole? Where is it? And so much of that time and effort, not to mention just the creativity of when we do this, we'll move to this. When we do this, we move to this. Once you plan it once, and you put it into Trello and it is right where you need it, not only in the main library, but for every student you have to teach it to, you've just eliminated that time. You can tweak your lesson and you think, this didn't go over that well. I'm going to correct this little bit, then it's corrected for all of them. So this is why you're able to eliminate the 30 minutes down to 5 minutes. Now, when you're Skype teaching, that's even better, because private lessons in Prague, for example, they're all over the city. They're in someone's office here and someone's office here and at this coffee shop here. And teaching online, it's just, a 2-minute break between classes. So imagine you can teach 3 hours and you get paid for 3 hours, and it takes you 3 hours versus you teach for 3 hours, you get paid for 3 hours, but it takes you 4.5. So that's the difference when you start to really get your system in line with this system and when you're teaching online.
Okay.
And what was your second question about what I'm doing next?
I was asking on getting students, lots of students, and some people want lots of students, and some people want to be organized to have less students and do other things with your time, like creating other courses and products to not to have all one-on-one all the time. But there is a question that is connected to that, because you might have thought about this. Diana says, have you ever thought to create a course with all your materials and the syllabus you have on Trello in case you want to give classes to a group? Well, we'll have to mention that you have done that already kind of for teachers by giving your experience, but for students, in a way, I think she's asking about repurposing all that information and materials you have created to be able to give these individualized lessons. But also, have you thought of creating a course out of that for a group?
Course for English learners or for English teachers? For English learners.
I would assume for English learners.
Yes, I have thought about that. What I'm working on right now is using a lot of these materials that I've been making. So I've been sort of making a lot of digital flashcards. I've been making audio recordings, and I've been making video recordings. Again, easier than you think. And I've got the tutorials at viewlingo.com/goals. But as I was doing this, I started to find what my niche is, trying to figure out what the students really want, because English is so huge. And everybody that's been talking at this summit has been talking about finding your niche, whatever that might be. So I sort of zeroed in on travel English and the story of two people traveling to the United States and what they would need to learn to be able to make this journey at a certain level, at an A2, B1 level. And I just started writing a story, and I'm working on that right now. So whatever I would be using to teach that, cue cards, audio, written assignments, I'm just slowly building them. And I also put them into my lessons in Trello for TEFL as I create them, but I'm sort of making this little course for students right now with that. As far as how one would get started with something like that, what do students come to you for? What do they really like that you do well? Maybe you explain grammar incredibly well. Maybe they love your accent. You have a beautiful British accent, and they want to know exactly how to speak like you. What little things, and many people have mentioned this, but you can start off with something as easy as an ebook. So I've got a couple ebooks on my website. One is a paid one is a free one. These are actually for teachers, but they were just a few things that people kept asking me about. And so I created these small ebooks for them. Then I developed one into a course. So I actually have a course that's how to learn grammar for English teachers when they go to a TEFL program. My course is taught in TEFL schools, and that came from an ebook that I did that was about, 1 page per grammar point, and I'd really thought through everything, and it took me a couple weeks to make. And then the course took me a couple months to make, but this is how you can start out if you want to sort of repurpose this great material that you're making. I tend to prefer the one-on-one lessons, so I haven't done any sort of online group lessons, but I know there's a lot of people who do those. I believe, Paulina, you do some of those, the
Sometimes.
online group lessons.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I think it's a very smart way to go, repurposing your materials and try it out. Put together a PDF of some things that your students are always asking you. Give it to them, get their feedback, and then maybe you can put it up on Gumroad. You can put it up on Teachers Pay Teachers. These are Gumroad, I think it's $10 a month. Teachers Pay Teachers might be free. And you can put it out there and see if anybody's interested in these materials. So that's definitely a good way to get started without thinking, I need a website, I need an online course. That's a good way to start.
Great. Perfect. And we've been talking a lot about Trello, because that's the way that you have found to organize and manage your students. And just for the sake of transparency, someone is asking, are you an affiliate of Trello?
Oh, good question. So Trello, I'm not currently an affiliate for any technology that I talk about, just so you know. Trello, well, here's the thing with Trello. They don't have, their affiliate program is everybody that I refer to, they give me a month free of Trello if I want the paid version. I don't actually use the paid version. The paid version does some flashy things. You can put up your own backgrounds. You can do a couple different power-ups. So I get a free month of the expensive version, which is $5 a month of Trello, and I don't even use it. But everything that I teach you in Trello, you're totally able to do it with the free version. So that is the affiliate program with Trello. But if you do it and then refer it to friends, you can get some of the flashy upgrades.
Great. Yeah. So that's good to know. And okay, so we are going to start to wrap up this conversation. We have lots of very interesting questions. We have time for a couple more. And also, I will like you, Jennifer, to tell us what's going on in your entrepreneurial life these days, anything you're working on, anything that you would like to share with our audience. Thank you so much for that free course. It's awesome. I posted the link in the chat. I'll post it again, but also people can find that link in your presenters page. So we'll talk about that in a second, because there is a question here about payment. And it says, Jennifer mentioned about payment in her course. Does she think it is better to ask for payment up front or not? And has she ever had anyone who hasn't paid? So a little bit of dealing with payment with new students. What are your thoughts on that?
Yes. Well, it depends how the relationship you have with the student. So with a lot of my online students, I had already had a sort of pay-as-you-go model. Either they paid me every time we had a lesson, they sent me money to my bank account, which is how they do it here after the lesson. Or we did an invoicing system where I sent them an invoice at the end of the month. And that's kind of how things are done in this culture. So it actually depends on the cultural, how it works in the country where you're teaching. But the packages were something that I introduced after I sort of had become more familiar with them. If you feel more comfortable, you can say to them, why don't we have a lesson? The first lesson of the package can be, if you're satisfied, you can just pay me the higher price, the one lesson package. And if we can just go along like that if you want. But if we do continue with this package, I require payment, can be half at the beginning, can be half at the end. Maybe you're comfortable with them getting payment month by month, something like this. But the reason that we do it in a package is because it sends, or the reason they're signing up for 3 months at a time is just like a regular course. They're not taking advantage. They're not canceling at the last minute. It's something that they've bought in this thing, just like they would at a school. When I go to my language school down here to learn Czech, I also have to pay at the beginning of the course. So it makes you look more professional to either get it all up front, or if you haven't established the relationship, they don't feel comfortable doing it where they pay half at the beginning and half at the end. Whatever is comfortable for you.
Okay. And there is a question, and I think this will be our final questions. If you have more questions for Jen, feel free to post them in the Facebook group and we can continue the conversation there. I posted the link to your free course, viewlingo.com/goals, but it's also in the presenters page. And I know you talk about this in that free course, but if you can give us maybe a little preview, because I just read a comment about your great presentation. I think people were impressed with it, and someone in the Facebook group also make a comment. What did you use to create the presentation? Working with PowerPoint? Someone says you
Yeah.
work on a Mac. We don't have time to give a big tutorial on how to make those
No, no.
things, but just to give a sense of people of your work process.
Sure. So I did all of that in Keynote, which is I have a Mac. Keynote is the PowerPoint version, or it's the Apple version of PowerPoint. There's some nice animation features that are pretty fancy in Keynote. And I screen record. So I use Camtasia. There's also ScreenFlow, but it is a program that allows you to record your screen. So I build this presentation, I kind of get it to how I want it, and then I just animate it, clicking through each animation as I'm recording my screen. And then I can edit it in Camtasia. If I do a good job, I don't need to edit much. And that's it. There's some, kind of nice illustrations. Some of them I draw, but some of them are from a sort of pay monthly. It's called freepik.com, PIK. And you can download, images that you want to use. And I just kind of built my own library. But I use a lot of those for the videos that I do in my grammar course. It's sort of an animated grammar course. View Lingo is the name of my website, because I'm a very visual learner, and I think for grammar sometimes it helps to sort of see the timelines, see everything moving around, and so that's how I create those videos as well.
Great. I think if I reflect back, I need to maybe double check. I think in the video interview I said Vulingo. Voo.
I know.
But that's okay. Now I know. Viewlingo, and now I know more where that is coming from. Jennifer, please tell us what's coming up. Any projects that you would like to share with our audience? What's going on?
Well, now I'm adding some things onto my grammar course, which is a grammar course that's meant for new teachers, because it's going to be in a couple new schools. And so this is a course that has been running here in a school in Prague for about a year now. And it's just helping teachers sort of feel confident in their grammar, understand what they need to know before they actually go to a TOEFL course. And after they leave one of these training courses, sometimes they don't feel confident in their grammar. And so this course has been running, and I'm sort of beefing it up right now. So I'm working on that, and always making improvements to my Trello for TOEFL course. I just introduced the Trello for TOEFL Tribe Board. So every month there's new additions, new lesson plans, new videos I've created that they can then send to their students, new decks of cards. So I'm always trying to add to that and eventually fill out the library for the customer. So when you buy it, you get everything that comes new in it every month.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you so much. And thank you for spending time with us. We have a very lively conversation. Lots of questions are there. So everyone, keep them coming. And I want to say thank you so much, Jennifer. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
You too. Thanks so much, Paulino.
You're welcome. For everyone else here with me, we are ending these live sessions. There is one more live session a little later today at 2:30 p.m. Central Time with Sabna Siegel. Her interview is about finding or creating materials for your students, so you can come back and ask more questions about that. And also today we have another networking group at 4 p.m. Central Time, and I'm gonna leave the link click to register, because I want you to register for each networking group. Remember, this is a chance also to meet other Online Teacher Summit participants, ask your questions. So if you are around, it depends on your time zone, today at 4 p.m., please register for that networking group and take advantage of it, because it's part of your registration at the Online Teacher Summit. Otherwise, hopefully I'll see you back at 2:30 p.m. Central Time for another live session. Keep being engaged. Keep taking action. Fill out that action guide with lots of notes, because this week you're getting lots of information that you really can process. Let's be honest, we can't process everything because it's a lot of information. So write it down, and later on you can step by step work on it. Okay, and watch out for another email today with a reminder of what's happening Friday and Saturday at the Online Teacher Summit. Other than that, thank you, everyone. Take care. Bye-bye.